This could go either way, but sometimes you have to bet on yourself and risk changing everything early than build a brand that stops listening. A few months ago, I thought we had finalized our packaging. And then a few customers started messaging me saying their bottles were leaking. Welcome to Trial and Error Diaries, where I'm sharing my challenges, wins, failures, and everything in between while building my way. One thing I'm learning as a founder is that business problems don't happen separately from life. You still have laundry to do, you still need to cook, you still have to walk your dog, you still have to show up to meetings, and somehow in between all of that, you're trying to make decisions that affect an entire brand that you're building. So here's a realistic, unaesthetic day in my life while I tell you what happened. When we first launched Maiéway, we were using amber bottles, and honestly, I loved them. They felt like the bottles our grandmother used to store this hair oil in that she made for us with love. A few months ago, I thought we had finalized our packaging. And then a few customers started messaging me saying their bottles were leaking. Not gonna lie, as a founder, that kind of feedback hurts a little more than people realize. Because you spend months obsessing over every detail thinking, this is it, we finally figured it out, and then suddenly you realize you didn't. But I think this is the part of building a business nobody really talks about enough. Sometimes the thing you're most attached to is the exact thing you have to let go of. I think before starting Maiéway, I imagined founders as people who always knew exactly what they were doing. But honestly, most days feel like trial and error. You try something, you learn, you adjust, and then you try again. So while all of this packaging stuff was happening, life was just still moving. Replying to messages, working on the website, cooking dinner, trying not to spiral every 5 minutes. And at the same time, constantly thinking, what's the right decision here? And initially I wanted to convince myself it wasn't a big deal. Like maybe it was just a one-off issue, but the more I sat with it, the more I realized something important. People trusted us enough to spend their money on a brand that was completely new. So if even one person had a bad experience, that mattered to me. I think sometimes founders get so emotionally attached to their vision that they stop listening. And I never want Maiéway to become that kind of brand. So I started reworking everything. New bottle, new pump, new packaging direction, more testing, different materials, and honestly, it was scary and challenging because changing packaging sounds simple until you realize it changes everything. Costs, shipping, labels, box dimensions, photography, brand identity, literally everything. But I think the hardest part wasn't even the packaging itself. It was the fear that comes with changing something after you've already introduced it to the world. Because once people know your brand one way, changing it suddenly feels scary. You start overthinking everything. What if people like the original version better? What if changing the packaging makes the brand lose its identity? What if customers think, wait, why are they changing it already? And as a founder, there's also this weird pressure to make it look like you had everything figured out from the beginning. Like changing your mind somehow means failure. But honestly, I think refusing to change is usually the bigger mistake. Because if your goal is to build something long term, you have to be willing to evolve, even when it's uncomfortable. And I think customers can feel the difference between a brand that protects its ego versus a brand that genuinely wants to improve the experience. So even though making this change felt terrifying at first, deep down, I knew listening was the right decision. Okay, pausing here for a second because you have to know what this is. This is spinach dal with some sardine fish fry that I made. Very popular in South India, especially Karnataka. We used to have this almost every week. I think this experience taught me something really important. Good brands aren't built by getting everything right the first time. They're built by listening fast. And changing packaging this early probably sounds dramatic to some people, but if we are building this brand for years to come, I'd rather fix problems early than ignore them for the sake of convenience. That's also why I share these moments publicly, because I don't want to pretend building a brand is always aesthetic, coffee runs, and perfect launches. Sometimes it's spreadsheets, supplier negotiations, packaging tests, boxes everywhere in your house, and redoing work you already thought was finished. But weirdly, those are also the moments where the brand actually starts becoming real. I think one of the most underrated parts of building publicly is that you get to watch the brand evolve in real time. Not from perfection, but from listening, learning, failing, adjusting, and trying again. And honestly, I wouldn't want to build it any other way. I think one of the biggest things I want you to feel with Maiéway is that this brand is being built with the community, not just sold to the community. Every message, every review, every piece of feedback you send, I genuinely read all of it. And honestly, this packaging change happened because people trusted us enough to be honest. So if you're ever supported Maiéway in any way, thank you. You're not just watching the brand grow, you're shaping it. I've been really chatty today because it's been a while since we spoke and I gave you an update on what's happening. It's also because all of this was happening in the background and I've been busy trying to make this work. While I've been waiting on the supplies, I also had to make a tough call and decision to pause on some of the activations that I had in mind for the brand. I know it's really crazy that I did that at the start of this launch, but what did I tell you in the beginning? I have to bet on myself right now. I have to listen to you. So I'm working towards a summer relaunch, I would say, of our packaging because our hair oil stays the same, our formula stays the same. And I hope you can support me on this journey while I build this brand with you. Anyway, that's today's trial and error diary. See you in the next one. That's your hair. Yeah. People are making coats out of dog's hair. We gotta find someone in here, Canada. That is in Iceland.